beautiful Miami and Hard Rock Stadium, site of this year's Capital One Orange Bowl, part, of course, of the college football playoff. Hi, folks, and welcome to this highly competitive matchup. We'll see a squad out of the Big 12, the TCU Horned Frogs, taking on a team from the ACC, the North Carolina Tar Heels. For EA Sports College Football, I'm Chris Fowler here with Kirk Herbstreit. Let's get this thing underway. Tar Heels will kick it away to start us off. And he's going to bring this out from a couple yards deep in the end zone. He's brought down at the 12. That's poor field position to start the drive. The Horned Frogs offense making their way on the field today. Kirk, let's check the impact players in this game. Guys who have been leaders, guys who are being counted on to deliver today.
Well, these are the guys that both these teams rely on, as you said, to be able to make the plays. And more importantly, when it gets into that point in the game where you need to be able to have some leadership, these are the men who are going to have to step up and be able to provide that for each team.
They're behind the sticks on 2nd and long here from the 12. Off the play fake, looking to throw the football. Grab behind the line. It's Payne. Defense makes the stop very close to a first down. Here we go. First third down of the game. It's a keeper trying to get into the marker.
Now, how about that? Good job by the offensive line. The quarterback, they pick up this first down here on 3rd down and 1 with the QB sneak. There are a lot of bodies crowding around that line. He was able to find just enough space to pick up the first down in a new set of downs.
Here's the second down play. Back to pass. It's Hoover. Looks to the left, and it's complete. And he'll head out of bounds, but not before picking up enough for a first down. The Horned Frogs are going to keep this drive rolling. They'll hand it off. The pickup is 7 yards. Now it's 2nd and 3. This is the 6th play on the drive. QB decides to keep it here. Quarterback gets down to avoid the big hit. Play number 7 on the opening drive, and it's 3rd and short. They'll try to run for the first down. They'll stop him behind the line for a loss of 1. And the Horned Frogs will line up to punt it away. And the punt will just bounce out of bounds. So the North Carolina Tar Heels offense takes the field. The first chance we had to see them today. And Kirk, we've seen this quarterback build a reputation for making plays when his team really needs them.
Well, I think the best thing about his, he's just consistent. You know what you're going to get with this guy. He typically makes very good decisions, but every once in a while, when he needs to step up and make a play, he's more than capable.
Defense reacts quickly. A very short gain on the play. Important second down play coming up. Off the play fake, he'll look to throw it. It's incomplete. He was hit as he threw that time. And now 3rd down coming up. They come to the line, a long way to go for the first down, but needing this crucial conversion right now. He's running out of time here. Oh, and it's dropped. A chance for a big play here in the early going, but some jitters on the part of that receiver. And on 4th down, the punter sends it away. The coverage team able to bring the returner to the ground. And now the first play of this drive is set up at the 37. On 1st down, it's play action. Looking for the wideout. Oh, what a grab! They bring him down, but an explosive play by this offense. Big gain. To throw, it's Hoover. Bringing pressure. Oh, down he goes. It's a sack.
How about that? One of the so-called little guys putting the pressure on the quarterback there. That was a strong safety sneaking in. I don't think the quarterback saw him, and eventually comes home with a sack.
First down sack pushes the ball back. Second down coming up. And the running back takes the handoff. Jukes to get past a man.
Great response by this offense after losing all those yards. Now they got a chance here on third down. You run the football, find a lane, pick up a good chunk, and now they have a chance here on this third and medium.
Slides to avoid the big hit. So on fourth down now, out comes the field goal unit. This will be a long-range attempt, 51 yards out. And it's good right down the middle. So we have our first points on the board. That makes it 3-0.
Boy, this guy had plenty of leg here, too. Chris, you remember the days when a kick from 50-plus was a major accomplishment? Now these guys knock these out like they're almost automatic.
So after the field goal, the kicker out there again to boot it away. Fields it just outside the goal line. And he stopped at the 20, trying to make something happen, but that's good coverage there. Here's the first play of the drive now from the 20-yard line. From the shotgun, it's a handoff. The gain is 3 yards, brings up a second down and 7. Breaks an open space. He's swarmed by the defense. So from the 28-yard line, it's a third and manageable here. Try and muscle for the first down. They bring him down, but that's a good play. Moves the ball to the 39. And the Tar Heels will have first and 10 here. Dropping back, it's Lopez. Running back grabs it on a screen. Spinning out of the tackle.
And the defense is getting pressure on the quarterback. They got a little bit fooled here by the screenplay. Nice positive gain for the offense.
And the quarterback keeps it here. And he'll be smothered right at the line for no gain. Third down play, looking for a fresh set of downs. Looking to pick up the first down through the air. Diving grab. What a play by that receiver. The tackle made, but the sophomore quarterback showing us the arm strength. Off the play fake, looking to throw on first down. Lets it go quickly. What a catch! That's a solid gain. Moves the football inside the 30. And first down. And looking to throw now on first down. The pocket breaking down. Quarterback takes off now, looking to scramble. Zero running room. Stopped right at the line of scrimmage. And Kirk, it's TCU with the lead so far. Let's check out the stats now through the opening period. They've flipped ends of the field. We're ready now for the second period. Here we go. First play of the quarter. Offense setting up for a second down play. Here's the snap. Quarterback looking to throw. Pulls it in. It's Johnson. They bring down the receiver, but that's a nice gain on that play. They face a third and short on the ninth play of this drive. It's an option look. Pitch to the back. Brings her in the end zone. And he could not be stopped. Touchdown, North Carolina.
You know, it's great to see the old traditional option executed to perfection. The running back knew right where to be, didn't panic when the ball was headed his way, and then once he got into space, it was smooth sailing all the way to the end zone.
And now here comes the point after attempt. PAT makes the score 7-3. Kickoff team out there, they are fired up after just scoring a touchdown. Return starts from inside the 5. Makes it to the 16. That's good coverage there. And for the first play of the drive, they'll set up at the 16. Looking to pass. It's Hoover. The receiver grabs it. They make the tackle, but not before a solid gain on that pass. Offense getting set. It's second down. Over the middle. It's Rodgers. And the Horned Frogs are moving quickly down the field. First and 10 play coming up. And they'll try to pick it up on the ground. He shreds the tackle. And the runner brought down right at the 38-yard line. What's the play call here on second down for this offense? He's looking to throw. Here's a throw underneath the tight end. And the gain just good enough for a first down. The Horned Frogs will try to keep this drive moving. Play action here on first down. It's an out route. The catch made. Oh, and he heads out of bounds after a really nice game there.
Chris, I think you got to give all the credit to the wide receiver here. Man-to-man coverage on an out route. That is a tough ask. Good inside move on the stem to separate from the defender, and a great throw by the quarterback near the sideline.
And he finds his tight end for the catch. They stop him after a 6-yard gain, so second and 4.
Well, that's the thing with this guy. You've got the ability to flex him out. He shows his versatility and what he can do from that slot position. He could be the quarterback safety blanket.
Pass caught, second down now. They'll try and run it. Here's the running back. And the Horned Frogs pick up enough for a first down here.
Just what a great battle here at the line of scrimmage. Good push by the offensive line, and the back does enough to be able to pick up the first down.
About time this offense gets going. It's a first and 10. Trying to find room. It's Barnes.
Love this early in the game by this defense, taking control of the line of scrimmage, not giving this back anywhere to go, and they keep him short of the first down.
Thrown quickly, caught in the right flat. And this one goes nowhere. Lucky to get back to the line of scrimmage. Looking to pass. It's Hoover. Grab down the middle. It's James. Tackled quickly at the 10, but now the offense really threatening to score. First and goal, they'll try to run it in. And the sophomore able to bring him down quickly. It's the 2-minute timeout of what's been a really competitive game so far. Chance for the offense to take the lead before the break. Takes off in a bootleg. Makes a quick grab. Offense moving backwards here, a long way from the goal line now. Look at a throw on third and goal. And he decides to just roll it away. That's going to bring up fourth down now. The coach chooses to go for a field goal attempt here. The field goal is good. So after coming away with 3 in that drive, the kickoff team is out. They'll return it from inside the 5. And he stopped at the 19. Good job by the coverage team. Here's the first play of the drive now. They begin at the 19. They start the drive with a quick throw to the left side. And the defense swarms not much of a gain on that completion. Now it's second down here. And it's incomplete. Just missed the wide receiver there. They're backed up here trying to make something happen on third and long. Dropping back. We're going to throw for the first down. Looking for a man deep down the left side. And the pass is dropped. Would have been a big gain, but he couldn't hold on. And the Tar Heels will line up to punt it away. Looking to kick it away for the second time. And we'll see what he can do on the return. And the returner is tackled by this punt coverage team. So here we go. First play of the drive, under 2 minutes before halftime. To throw, it's Hoover. It's a screen pass complete to the running back. Defense surrounds him. Just a short gain on that completion. They'll have to hurry now. Second down with the clock ticking. Quarterback drops back, probing the secondary. The receiver makes the catch. Brought down across his midfield to the 46. And a timeout is called to talk strategy. Close game here as we approach halftime. On 1st and 10, looking to throw. Makes the grab with plenty of room to run. They finally get him down, but not before he reaches the 25. On 1st and 10, they'll look to throw it. Looking to set up a screen pass here. They get him on the ground finally, but it'll be first down from the 14. And a quick timeout call by the offense after the play. And the Horned Frogs will line up on 1st and 10. Using his legs, it's Payne. Stopped after a small gain. Now looking at 2nd and 9. From the shotgun, he's probing the secondary. And the pass is incomplete just across the goal line. After the incompletion, they'll have to try to convert here on 3rd and 9. Dropping back, looking to throw for the first down. Caught near the goal line. And he's in. Touchdown, Texas Christian.
Now this defense is so caught up in all the wide receivers, they forgot about the running back. He's not just back there running the ball. This guy's involved in the passing game. Nice throw and catch and a touchdown.
And now they'll set up for the point after. Make the extra point and go up 6. So the offense gets momentum scoring before halftime. Now the kickoff. We'll see if the defense can get a stop and preserve that momentum. Bringing it out. It's Green. Here comes the first play of the drive. Can they do something in the final 30 seconds of the half? He's going to hand this off. Great cut there. And breaks free with room to run. The offense will take their first time out of the half to talk strategy here.
Well, just a great play by the running back here. Just finding his lanes and exploding through the gap when it opened up.
Back to throw. It's Lopez. Pass rush closing in. So a timeout is called to talk strategy. Maybe time for 1 or 2 more plays before halftime. So the offense looking to be efficient here. Not much time remaining before the end of the half. Quarterback looking to pass here on 2nd down. Caught over the middle. It's Gauze. Now the offense will call a timeout here. Something they didn't like about what they saw there. Wanting to make an adjustment before this critical down. To pick up the 3rd and short through the air. He's got it down the left sideline for a huge gain. Out of bounds after a nice gain. Finally, a positive play from this offense. And that will do it for the first half here. Kevin Connors now has our halftime update.
Fellas, by the looks of things, we've had one enjoyable first half in Springfield. And a lot of coaches will say limiting the big plays and maybe hitting on a few yourself is key. But I'm more of a move the chains guy. Give me efficiency every day of the week and twice on Saturday. The offensive unit that subscribes to the less is more philosophy might be the one that leaves here today with a big fat W.
The Horned Frogs will kick this away to start the second half. And the return starts just inside the end zone. And the coverage team gets the returner to the ground. Here's the first play of the drive now, backed up at the 15. On 1st and 10 here, looking to throw the ball. finds his target, and it's complete. Tackle made after a solid gain. They'll spot the ball for 31. Fresh set of downs for the offense. First down. Looking for a gap. It's Gauze. Going absolutely nowhere. That would be a loss of the play. Offense behind the 6 now on 2nd and 11 after the 1-yard loss. Play fake. Looking to throw. That one falls incomplete. Looking for a flag. Doesn't get it. Brings up 3rd down. Not going to be easy here. Backed up a long way to go for a first down. The offense with some pre-snap eye candy. Back to throw. It's Lopez. Running out of time in the pocket. And he just throws that one away. Took a big shot, but avoids the sack. And the Tar Heels bring their punt team onto the field. Ball fielded near the 35. And the returner will be brought down. Here's the first play of the drive now. We'll begin at the 39. Ball handed off. Tackle up near midfield at the 48. 2nd down after that run on the previous play. Keep it on the ground. There's the handoff. They get him down, but the gain moves the ball to the +40. Great start for the drive. Back-to-back explosive plays, and now another first down. Using the ground game here. Tailback has the handoff. Now they test the middle of the defense, but get nothing. 2nd down play coming up for this offense. Change of pace now, looking to throw the football. Fires it to the wideout. It is complete. What a grab by the receiver right near the sideline. And the Horned Frogs pick up enough yardage for a fresh set of downs. They're going to run it here. The defense all over it. They stop him right at the line. 2nd down after that one on the previous play. Here's the snap. Looking to throw here. Running back has it on the screen now. Ball carrier heads out of bounds, but the pickup was good enough to move the chains. First down. And the Horned Frogs line up with a 1st and goal. Here's the handoff on 1st and goal. No stopping him on that one. Touchdown, TCU.
Chris, I know the back's going to get a lot of attention for this touchdown, but I was focused on the offensive line. You had 5 guys working as one. Great communication, able to get up to that 2nd level and open things up nicely to allow the back into the end zone.
So they'll try to add to the lead now with a PAT. PAT puts him up 13 now. So after putting up the touchdown, the kickoff team is out there to boot it away. And he takes this from inside the 5. He'll be tackled at the 18. That's good coverage there. Offense out there for the first play of this drive from the 18. Looking downfield. It's Lopez. Quick throw to the left. Oh, he makes the catch. They bring him down, but a big chunk of yardage on the play.
This big tight end running a corner route, listen, as a defensive coordinator, if you put a smaller safety on him, he's too small to be able to match up with his size. And if you go with a linebacker, you're going to be too slow to go with his speed.
One play moves the ball to the 44. It'll be first down. And now the handoff. Defense makes the stop after a 5-yard gain, so 2nd and 5. Looks to his right. They stop him, but it's a first down. And the Tar Heels come to the line to start a fresh set of downs. Here comes a first down pass attempt. He's going to pull it down and run. Brought down after a 7-yard gain, so it's 2nd and 3. Makes the catch. It's Johnson. And the defense smothers him for no gain. Urges urgency now for the offense. They hate to come up empty on this drive, down multiple scores. Moves out of the pocket. Trying to create outside the pocket, but they've got him for a sack.
And just like that, you squeeze the life out of this offense. That's another sack by this defense. They have been in that backfield the entire game, and a big reason why these guys are enjoying a lead.
And the Tar Heels will bring their punt team on the field now. That one lands and bounces out of bounds. Here's the first play of the drive now, set up at the 24. Off the play fake on first down. Defense is coming after him. They bring him down after a short return, but this defense comes up with the takeaway.
This offense just blew an opportunity. Have a nice lead here in the second half with the football. The last thing you want to do is turn it over, and they put the ball on the ground and now give your opponent a chance to get right back in this game.
And the Tar Heels offense is back out on the field. They were forced to punt it away last time, so let's see if they can get clicking in this possession. Handoff here from the shotgun. Defense gets him down, but they'll take the gain on that play. And the Tar Heels looking to take advantage of the red zone trip here. Looking downfield, it's Lopez. That's going to be incomplete. A lot of contact, no flag, brings up third down. Out of the gun now on third down. That one is incomplete. The defender was right there, and it brings up fourth down now. And the Tar Heels will come to the line looking to convert on fourth down. Fourth down, looking to throw for it. Catch made over the middle. He'll be taken down, but he does have first down yardage.
Well, it's always a gamble to go for it on fourth down where you're already in field goal range, but it looks like they won't rehash this decision when it's all said and done. That's a first down.
Offense coming to the line. They might have a chance for a couple more plays before we reach the end of the quarter. There's the snap. Looking to throw the ball. The pass rush gets home. And Kirk, it's TCU with the lead so far. Sitting in pretty good position as we wrap up the third quarter. Let's check out the game stats so far. They've had the break to talk about it. Now we begin the quarter with the offense set up second and goal. Fakes the handoff here, looking to throw it. Makes the catch. Can he get in? Brought down with the completion, moves the ball down to the 4.
Well, that completion gets him a little closer. Quick decisions needed here, especially with third down coming up.
They break the huddle on third and goal. Field goal doesn't do much good here. Looking for a receiver. Caught in the backfield. It's Johnson. And he will score! Touchdown, Tar Heels! We had a short field. The offense did exactly what they're supposed to do. That would have been a big ask for the defense there.
Absolutely. But when you're given that kind of field position, anything less than a touchdown would be a disappointment. They did exactly what they needed to do by capitalizing on that short field.
They're set now to try the PAT. PAT up and good. They get a little bit closer. Got momentum after scoring that touchdown. Now the kickoff team out there to kick it away. He'll take the return and try to get some better field position. He tackled at the 17. Strong job by the coverage team. And the first play of the drive now coming up at the 17-yard line. And he keeps it. They stop him right at the 24. Second down play coming up. Throwing off play action. Let's it fly to the wideout. Oh, and he dives to make a beautiful catch there. First down and 10 now. Grab behind the line. It's Baker. Nowhere to run. They'll corral him for no gain. Second down after that previous play. Looking to throw. It's Hoover. Quick throw to the left side. He makes the grab. Not much after the catch, but it is good enough for a first down. Pounding away with the run game. Only a small gain. Now looking at 2nd and 9. Hand off to the single back. And he goes nowhere. Stop cold behind the line of scrimmage. The important play right here. Close game, 4th quarter, 3rd and long. A quick throw out left, complete. The defense will wrap him up after a 7-yard gain. It'll bring up 4th down. And now the defense will call a timeout here to make an adjustment on their side before this crucial play. He's throwing for it on 4th down. Finds his receiver. That's enough for the first down. They've got him, but they convert on 4th down, and the drive keeps going. Defense spends their 2nd timeout to try to regroup. Out of the shotgun, he hands it off. And the senior able to make the stop after a short gain. Now a timeout taken by the defense, trying to preserve as much clock as possible for their offense. Trying to run, it's Payne. Run it up the middle, but stuffed for no gain. So the clock stops as we head into the final 2 minutes of play here. This defense needing to step up and make a play now. And he'll drop back here on 3rd down. Cannot connect, incomplete, and now 4th down. So the decision is to not go for it, but settle for 3. Here comes the field goal team. This is important, a chance to extend the lead deep here in the 4th quarter. And it sails right through the middle of the uprights. Solid kick. Following the field goal, the kickoff team is out there now. Returner choosing to field this one. The returner is brought down. Gets us started with the next drive. Here's the first play of the drive now. They're backed up at their own 14. To the air, it's Lopez. Looking right, this one caught. Tackle made, but it moves the ball to the 25 as they try to get this drive going. The clock is still running. They got to get set quickly. Looking to throw it on 1st down. Grab down the middle. It's Johnson. Oh, he fought hard there. Broken tackle, but brought down short of the sticks. They'll crank up the tempo here on 2nd down. The time is running out. Looking deep for late game heroics. Tried to go very deep there. Good effort. Now it's 3rd down. Dropping back. Looking to throw for the first down. Grabbed by the receiver. First down. They'll keep the drive going to the 37.
This is a big conversion by this offense. They're down now in the 2nd half. Probably limited opportunities at this point in the game. Every chance you get your hands on the ball, you need points. They keep this drive alive right here.
And the Tar Heels starting a new series here on 1st and 10. Drops back from the shotgun, looking for an open man. Throws it to the right. Finds a man downfield. That's a big gain to the right. They get him down, but a big gainer to the 42. And the offense wisely spikes the ball here to stop the clock. The back behind the quarterback now in the pistol. 2nd down, we're going to throw it. Caught over the middle. It's Johnson.
Well, 4th quarter down by a couple of scores. This offense doing everything they can to not just score points, but do it in a hurry, try to preserve the clock. Here, they're tackled in bounds. They don't pick up a...
Looking downfield near the end zone. Oh, and he dropped it. The would-be touchdown could not come up with the football. Now it's 4th down. And they will trot out the field goal team here. Oh, and he missed it. The kick is no good. The deficit still at 9 after the miss, a 2-possession game.
That's a missed opportunity for some points here. The way they were moving the football, I thought maybe a touchdown at the very least, 3 points, but instead he shanks it.
Looks like the quarterback will just take a knee here.